friends. I'm so glad to see you again. And today we are going to be reading Flat Stanley. And Flat Stanley is one of my favorite books. I hope that you enjoy it too. Now, one of the things that I like to do before I read, if I know I'm going to have to answer some questions about what I'm reading, is I like to look through the questions and just get an idea of what's going to be asked of me before I even start the chapter. So here are the questions about the first chapter. Chapter 1, this is on the sheet that I've given you in your packet. Who is in the Lambchop family? The Lambchop family. We're going to have to find out who is in that family. So keep that in your mind. Number 2. What did Mr. Lambchop miss from Arthur's comment on page 1? Now, I happen to know that this study guide must have been taken from a different version of the book, because I would look on page 2 for the answer to that. But on Epic, if you're reading it on Epic, it might be on page 1. Number 3, what makes this story a fantasy? Use text evidence from pages 3, 4, and 5 to prove your answer. So today, when I'm reading to you from chapter 1, I would like you to note how you know it's a fantasy, not a real story, a fantasy story. Number 4, what do you think is strange about Stanley's parents' reaction? Remember, he's Flat Stanley, the main character. What do you think is strange about the way the parents react in chapter 1? And number 5 is something you don't need to read the book to be able to do. It says for number 5, find something that is about 4 feet tall, and I gave you a ruler in your packet. So you can put the ruler up on something that you think is going to be 4 feet tall, then hold your finger, put the ruler up again, hold your finger, put the ruler up again, until you measure something that is as long as 4 feet. 1 foot wide and 1/2 an inch thick. So you can use your ruler to figure that out too. And you're just going to find some things around your house that measure that length, height, and width. Okay, friends, keep those questions in your mind. And now we're going to read chapter 1 of Flat Stanley. Flat Stanley, his original adventure. This is the 50th anniversary. Wow, this is an old book, but it's a classic, by Jeff Brown. I love the illustrations in this book too, so I'll show you the illustrations. Chapter 1. Here we go. The big bulletin board. Breakfast was ready. I will go wake the boys, Mrs. Lambchop said to her husband, George Lambchop. Oh, we now know something about the Lambchops. That's a funny last name. Just then their younger son Arthur called from the bedroom he shared with his brother Stanley. Hey, come and look, hey! There he is. There's the brother. The brother's name is Arthur. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop were both very much in favor of politeness and careful speech. Hay is for horses, Arthur, not people. Have you ever heard that expression? It means that you're not supposed to call somebody by saying, hey, hey. It's not polite. Mr. Lambchop said as they entered the bedroom, try to remember that. Excuse me, Arthur said, but look. And I think this is the point that the second question is asking. What does Mr. Lambchop not see? What does he not understand Arthur is trying to show him? He pointed to Stanley's bed. Across it lay the enormous bulletin board that Mr. Lambchop had given the boys a Christmas ago so they could pin up pictures and messages and maps. It had fallen during the night on top of Stanley. But Stanley wasn't hurt. In fact, he would have still been sleeping if he had not been woken up by his brother's shout. What's going on in here? He called out cheerfully from beneath the enormous board. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop hurried to lift it from their beds. Heavens, said Mrs. Lambchop. Gosh, said Arthur, Stanley is flat. And here he is. Oh, he is definitely flat, except for his toes there. As a pancake, said Mr. Lambchop. Darndest thing I've ever seen. Let's all have breakfast, Mrs. Lambchop said. Then Stanley and I will go see Dr. Dan and hear what he has to say. That's making me think about question number 4. What is strange about Stanley's parents' reaction? Now tell me, if you were flattened by a bulletin board, do you think your parents would just carry on and eat breakfast as normal? I don't think my parents would have either. Okay, let's go ahead and read on. In his office, Dr. Dan examined Stanley all over. How do you feel? He asked. Does it hurt very much? I felt sort of tickly for a while after I got up, Stanley Lambchop said, but I feel fine now. Here's the doctor checking him out. Well, that's mostly how it is with these cases, said Dr. Dan. Has he seen many kids flattened by bulletin boards? Huh. We'll just have to keep an eye on this young fellow, he said when he had finished his examinations. Sometimes we doctors, despite all our years of training and experience, can only marvel about how little we really know. Mrs. Lambchop said she thought Stanley's clothes would have to be altered by the tailor now, so Dr. Dan told the nurse to take Stanley's measurements, and you'll be taking some measurements at the end too. Mrs. Lambchop wrote them all down. Stanley was 4 feet tall, about a foot wide, and half an inch thick. And there's the end of chapter 1. So, think again, who is the Lambchop family? Number 2, what did Mr. Lambchop miss from Arthur's comment on page 1, which we now know was on page 2, when Arthur commented, look, the bulletin board fell. What did Mr. Lambchop not realize? Chapter 3, what makes this story a fantasy? How do we know it's not real? Chapter 4, for goodness sakes. Question 4, question 3. Question 4, what do you think is strange about Stanley's parents' reactions? And number 5, find things that match Stanley and measure them with your ruler. All right, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye.